Chapter 3: The Very Slightly Magical Backyard Disaster. The next morning, Abigail stepped into the backyard with determination, and Steve stepped out with 3 mismatched socks, a cape made from one of her old pillowcases, and a level of confidence far greater than his magical skill. "Today," Steve declared, dramatically planting his wand in the dirt like a flag, "we conquer the basics." Abigail folded her arms. "Yesterday you turned my beanbag pink, summoned a butterfly disaster, and almost turned my hair into soup." Steve nodded solemnly, "which is why I have prepared a list of spells that are extremely safe." He unfurled a long scroll that promptly rolled all the way across the yard and into a shrub. Abigail picked up the nearest end. "This says, spells that Steve probably can't mess up." "Yes," Steve said proudly. "I made that list myself." Abigail raised an eyebrow. "That does not make me feel better." Steve stroked his chin. "Your concern is noted. But fear not. Today we start with spell number 1, Simply Grow." "What does that do?" she asked. "It makes a plant grow a little bit, just a tiny bit, a very slightly magical, extremely harmless amount." Abigail pointed to a lonely marigold by the fence. "Okay, let's try it on that one." Steve squared his shoulders. "Prepare to witness the miracle of controlled magical growth." He waved his wand. A spark appeared. A soft whoosh sounded, and the marigold grew 1 inch. Abigail gasped. "You did it!" "I did," Steve beamed. Then the marigold grew another inch. Steve's smile faltered, then another. Abigail stepped back. Steve?" The marigold kept growing, taller, broader, wobblier. Within seconds it was the size of a lamppost, then a small tree. Then a giant marigold tower. "Steve!" Abigail yelled. "I don't know why it's still going." Steve panicked. It was supposed to grow slightly. The marigold now cast a massive shadow over half the yard. Bees circled it, delighted by their new skyscraper. "Stop it!" Abigail cried. Steve flipped wildly through his tiny spellbook. "Where is the section on plant overgrowth?" The massive marigold shuddered, its petals trembling, and then, poof! A burst of golden pollen exploded outward like a flowery volcano. Abigail coughed. "Steve!" Steve sneezed violently. Achoo! Each sneeze launched a spark from his wand. One spark hit a pebble. The pebble began bouncing like popcorn. Another spark hit the sprinkler head. The sprinkler turned on, spraying a rainbow-coloured mist. Abigail said. "Why is the water rainbow?" Steve sniffled. "My sneezes are magical." "Of course they are," Abigail sighed. The marigold wobbled again. "Okay," Steve said. "We need a counterspell." He found one. "Stoppy growy fi!" "That does not sound real," Abigail said. "It is completely real." Steve insisted. "Probably." He waved his wand. Blue sparkles shot out, bounced off the marigold, and blasted across the yard. The swing set shook and grew 3 times taller. "Oh no," Abigail whispered. "Oh no," Steve echoed. Then the giant marigold began to lean. "Run!" Abigail cried. They dove out of the way as it collapsed with a thundering whump, sending another cloud of glittering pollen swirling through the air. The pollen mixed with rainbow mist, split into glowing marigold orbs, and each orb popped into dancing magical petals. Those petals drifted down. One landed on the soccer ball. Poof, it grew legs. One landed on the wheelbarrow. Poof, it sprouted wings. One landed on the garden gnome. Poof, it grew a mustache twice its body length. "Steve!" Abigail yelled. "I didn't plan for this." The chaos grew, running sockle flapping wheelbarrow mustached gnome until Steve found another spell. "A stabilizing whirlwind." "A whirlwind," Abigail shouted. "No, yes, maybe." He cast it. A tiny tornado formed, sucking up petals, sparkles, half the laundry, Steve's sock, and one very confused squirrel. "Steve, turn it off! I can't! It has to finish on its own." The whirlwind spun faster. Faster! Pop! Everything dropped harmlessly to the ground. The pollen vanished, the petals disappeared. The chaos stopped. The giant things shrank back to normal. Abigail opened her eyes. "Is everything normal now?" Steve surveyed the yard. "The disaster," he said proudly, "has been very slightly resolved." Abigail laughed. "That was the worst safe spell ever." Steve sighed. "I know, but we fixed it, eventually." Abigail smiled. "We'll just need more practice." Steve nodded. "Maybe we should get helmets and goggles," Abigail added, "and possibly an insurance policy." Abigail burst into giggles. Steve bowed. Thus ends our very slightly magical backyard disaster. They both knew the next one was only a matter of time.
Abigail danced in her polka dot boots, Steve by her side with his magic pursuits. A capybara with a sparkle and a twist, casting spells he could never resist. Oh Steve, the magical beast. A capybara wizard at every feast, with a twitch of his whiskers the world takes a spin. Abigail laughs as the cast begins. They turn the moon into a big balloon, floated past the stars, landed in Cancun. Steve said hola with a magical grin. Taco shells rained and the party began. He wiggled his nose, the maracas shook. Abigail sang from her spellbound book. Oh Steve, the magical beast. A capybara wizard at every feast, with a twitch of his whiskers the world takes a spin. Abigail laughs as the cast begins. They wiggled his nose, the maracas shook. Abigail sang from her spellbound book. Oh Steve, the magical beast. A capybara wizard at every feast, with a twitch of his whiskers the world takes a spin. Abigail laughs as the cast begins. He made the rivers dance, the mountains hum, turned a pumpkin into a drum. Abigail said, Steve, you're right, my friend. Let's never let this magic end.